Hello everyone, how are you? Welcome back to another sort of episode of Mike on the Mic. I've decided to do it this way again, like I did that one other time, because the weather again is awful and I can't get any sort of film done outside because the world, no, the ground is made of mud. So, feeling a little bit sick as I film this, because basically I suffer from hay fever. Okay, that's not why I feel sick, but bear with me. And you probably tell by my voice, I've got bad sinuses anyway, and I've got sinusitis and I need to get an operation on that. But anyway, in terms of my, what do I call it? Hay fever, that's the one. Basically, as an I'm not doing too well, an allergy to pollen. And I used to work with a girl whose mother was a beekeeper, and she told me that she also had an allergy to pollen. She also had hay fever, and how she cured it was she took a spoonful of honey every morning, not just sort of processed honey from the supermarket, but pure honey with all the pollen still in it from a beekeeper, once every morning, and over the course of maybe 6 months to a year she built up an immunity to the honey, and therefore she cured hay fever. So that's what I've been trying to do. But I don't have a sweet tooth anyways. I don't like the taste, and it's made me feel a little bit sick. I don't know if it's because of the allergy I have to the hay fever, to the pollen in it, or I don't know. But anyway, that's not why I'm doing this video. The reason I'm doing this video today like this, more than anything else, is this is the last, I am not doing well today, the last time ever I'm going to talk about the Jaguar X-Type. I've been talking about it so much, but let's just recap. I bought a Jaguar X-Type, which is a Ford Mond on a fancy frock, from a dealer, for just shy of £1,700, £1,695, and it was an utter mistake. It's been a heap, an utter heap. Since the last time I spoke to you, more stuff's happened, but before we get to that, you may be aware that the engine management light came on before I even got home, and I stupidly, rather than just taking the car back and saying no, I'm not having this car, the engine management light was on, or fix it completely, because the guy said at the start, if the catalyst is gone, and it is the catalyst that was gone, bank 1 catalyst, because it's a 6-cylinder, three cylinders per bank, is gone. So they said it's going to cost way too much to get a new catalyst and fit compared to the value of the car. We'll just buy it back off you and fix it ourselves and then sell it for a more expensive price, which is a fair enough reason, fair enough way to go about it. But anyway, I said, well, how about I buy a second-hand catalyst off the internet and try and make it work, because I like the car, I like the engine, I like the V6 engine. So what did I do? I spent 50 quid on a K&N filter, I spent 38 quid on the right spark plugs, and I got the gaps correct, and I talked about the job. Replacing the spark plugs on bank 1 was an absolute, it was a nightmare. What I didn't maybe mention, I don't know if I did mention it, but when I first test drove it, okay, the road was wet and everything, so I didn't get a full feel of the car, but the front brake disc was sticking on, so they slackened that off and gave it a new caliper before selling me the car. But unfortunately, when I got home, I realised the rear one was sticking on the rear offside, which is behind the driver. So I took it to our local mechanic, who simply just freed it off. It was not a problem, so I've had to free that off. And then it wasn't driving very well. I said this before, I got a new air mass sensor, so that was done to sort the feeling out, because it was a bit hesitant and yada yada yada. Okay, that worked ish worked, so that was a bit better. And then the suspension started creaking and it lost steering fluid, so I took it back to the garage and said, fix this steering fluid leak. That was easy enough. And creaking suspension, they replaced a track control arm. And then when I recorded the last mic, I think it was the last one, I mentioned it started creaking again, so I took it to our mechanic again, and I wasn't going to buy a new track control arm. I just lubricated the bushes and everything, put some good lubrication up into the bushes themselves. What you do is you drill a tiny little hole, put the lubrication into it, seal the hole off again, so that's fine, that worked. However, that isn't the bad news. The bad news was I was on the way to the boxing training that Matthew, you remember Matthew, the guy who was supposed to help me do this channel but doesn't, he runs a sort of amateur boxing club just for me and him and our cousins and stuff, or my cousins, his wife's cousins, so it was my sister. Anyway, on the way there, I was stuck behind the road Land Rover Defender, and it's a single track road, so I had to wait for a gap, and there was a gap, so I went for it to overtake. And because it's a very small capacity V6, it was a 2.1 litre V6, so each cylinder was very small. There's a lot of top end to its power delivery, very little torque at the bottom end, so you've got to rev it. So I was probably up around about 5,500 RPM when it went into limp-home mode, and it felt like I hit a brick wall, because limp-home mode wouldn't let you rev the engine past 3,000 RPM. So it honestly felt like hitting a brick wall. Like the electronics cut in, and they would not let the car go any further. So I had to abandon overtake, pull it back in behind the Land Rover. I had to abandon it. I didn't have the power to get past, which is dangerous as hell, because if there's a car behind me also overtaking, he would have slammed up the back of me, because the car engine braked like crazy and the brake lights don't come on. So essentially the car just slowed down and they wouldn't have known why. Anyway, I was raging. Obviously I was very unhappy at that, because the light had been on again, and I was just getting sick of this car. And then this went into limp-home mode just for a few seconds, and then it was back to just the light on. And then, to add insult to injury, about a mile later down the road, the Land Rover that was still stuck behind flicked up a big stone and chipped the windscreen. So I got to Dunfermline, which is where the boxing was. I then did the boxing training, and then when I was going to head through to Stirling to see Rachel, to spend a couple of days with her, the light was off again. The car was driving better. I was like, oh, maybe it had something in the exhaust catalyst after all, and it's cleared through. I don't know. So fine. And I drove for 4 days maybe with the light off. And then when I was on the way, like I mentioned, to our mechanic, to Don's, to get the creaky suspension fixed, the side that I did, the one that he drilled through, lubricated, that one, it went to limp-home again. So everything, you know, there's something fundamentally wrong with the car, because a catalyst doesn't cause an engine to get into limp-home mode. A catalyst running below threshold would just throw up a warning. It would not turn the engine to limp-home mode. So got to the garage, he did this creaky suspension. I wanted him to look at the tracking, so we put the car in the air, because it was very twitchy around the corners. If you're driving hard, it was very twitchy. So I wanted to look at the tracking. The front tracking was spot on. The rear suspension geometry was shot to pieces. Shot to pieces. Like, for example, remember I was doing the Yokomo? You might have seen it. I was doing this Yokomo overhaul, and I spent a while doing the cambers and towing and everything on the suspension to get it right. The cambers on that Jaguar X-Type at the back should be a maximum of about 1.1 to 1.2 degrees negative, which is inwards. Maximum. They were about 2.6 or 2.7 each wheel, so it was more than double the acceptable threshold. Okay, and you could tell, you could look at the inside rim, the tyre, and it was really getting to worn in, because it was leaning over too far. And then we also noticed, hang on here, look at the look at the toe out. It was towing out. The back wheels were towing out. On that car, they should be either straight ahead or very slightly towed in, like half a degree towed in, or straight ahead. Toe out, you never have toe out on the back end of a car, ever, on any car. So that's why it was twitchy. And the only reason it was still going in a straight line was because it was equally bad on both sides. Now the thing is, there's no adjustment at all. There's no adjustment on the back end on the suspension on that. So how is it so far out? Well, it could be that the bushes are all worn and old and they're all sagging a bit, and a little bit of sag here, a little bit of sag here. It's a multi-link suspension setup, so eventually you've got lots of sag and whatever. But even that doesn't seem to be enough. However, I don't know if I mentioned the sills on a car in the UK. I don't know what it's like for the road test exam, or what do you call it? We call it the MOT. I don't know what you call it in your country, wherever you're from. Maybe you could let me know. And if your rules are the same, if you're from, I know that Europe, for example, Germany's stricter than us, but I don't know the rest of Europe. I don't know what North America does. So let me know if you know what you do in your country. But basically, the MOT, the once a year check for all cars, states that for the sills underneath, any structural points, there can't be any corrosion or rust within a foot of a structural point. So you can have a rusty sill, as long as it's not rusty, within a foot of a, you know, a suspension mount, for example, or a seatbelt mount. Now, this car, this Jaguar, has false sills welded in to hide the real sills. Think about that for a second. These false sills have been in for a little while, a few years, because I can see on the MOT certificates that they're putting, they can't fail it because they're not allowed to unbolt anything. They're not allowed to remove stuff, so they can't fail it because they can't see the real sills. But they always put a little note saying cannot get access to sills because there's false sills, covers over the top. Now these false sills are rotting in themselves. What horrors lurk under those on the real sills? The only reason to hide them is because there is rust or rot within a foot, and it's bad enough that the person wasn't willing to just get it cut out and welded and replaced. It was so bad that it was going to cost too much. So there's obviously more than just a point with a foot of rust, or some rust within a foot of a structural point. It's obviously a lot worse than that on both sides. Could it be that the car is sagging at the back because the structural points are weak and starting to sort of bend and buckle and fray? Could it be that? Holy crap. If that's the case, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, because frankly, I mean, Jaguar dropped the ball with this. I don't understand. Mercedes, for example, a few years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, no, a little bit longer than that, late 90s to early 2000s, they had an idiot put in charge of the company, an accountant who was only concerned about the bottom line, the profit. Okay, so you may know this, that Mercedes quality, Mercedes reputation took a nosedive, because up until that point, Mercedes made perfection. There was no such thing as a Mercedes with a design flaw up until sort of late 90s, and then they had that horrible sort of few years, 8-10 years, where there was issues with corner cutting, and there was they cut down the numbers of layers of paint from 7 to 2, and they also used cheaper water-based paints on certain colours, which caused rust. The suspension mounting points for the, let me think of this, W210 E-Class, that's what it's called, the front suspension mounts were horrendous. They were spot welded on, and they were not on a 2.25 ton car. They were not, you know, there was plenty of this going on, and so Mercedes took a reputation hit, rightfully so, and they've been working towards getting this reputation back. Now, those were superb cars, which then they started making okay cars. The engines were still phenomenal, the gearboxes were still phenomenal. The engineers, the same guys, were still working on these cars. They were still brilliant engineers. They just had stupid leadership. Now, so they made okay cars for a little while. Now they're making great cars again. Jaguar, on the other hand, took a Ford Mondeo and put a Jaguar badge on it. But there's certain things about this car that's more complicated than the Ford. The sensors were more although the Ford's actually quite bad for sensors as well. But the sensors are more complicated because those V6 engines were exclusive to the X-Type, although it was a Ford engine. So what they've done is they made an apocalyptically awful car, yet somehow the reputation has survived. Don't understand that. Anyway. So I'd had enough of this car. I took it back to the dealer and said, I have sunk £600 of my own money into this car, which is true. Trying to save it. Because I liked it, driving it. I liked the look of it, and I liked the car. I liked the smell for some reason. And I tried my best. This guy was an arse, right? And a complete crook. This guy, complete crook. It was just over 30 days. And I printed out the consumer, what was it? The Consumer Rights Act, that's what it was called, 2015, which was the latest Consumer Rights Act for people purchasing cars from dealers with warranties. And it stated that within the 6 months, if there's anything seriously wrong, they have to assume that it was wrong when the car was bought unless the dealer can prove otherwise, right? He was having none of it. He was saying, oh, there's a new one this year, and it's changed it, and now it's the consumer that has to prove. That's nonsense. It's a lie. It's just a lie. Flat out lie. That doesn't exist. I mean, I looked up. That's the latest one. So he's lying. He also accused me of driving 2,000 miles in the car. In a month, I do 5,000 miles in a year. I don't commute. I work offshore. I maybe done about 450 miles at the most, and half of that was driving back to his garage. Just a liar and a scumbag and a crook, and he fully intends to sell the car again, because after an hour of arguing, it was really ugly, shouting at each other. He wouldn't, refusing to give me a refund. He says I was looking for things to find wrong with it. Like, looking for things? How many people in his entire career as a salesman had spent £600 of their own money within the first couple of weeks trying to fix the car themselves, a car that they sold with a warranty because I liked it? Looking for things wrong with it? Give me a break. So, at the end of the day, I got $1,450. So I've lost a few £100 on the retail price, but I did keep the second-hand cat, so I can maybe recoup £100 of that. So I've lost about £600 and £700. I then had to cancel the insurance, which was £90 almost to cancel insurance. So I'm well out of pocket, but I'm relieved to get rid of this piece of crap car. Relieved, because what a headache. I was losing sleep over it. I was worrying all the time. I mean, the sills, even just replacing sills is expensive, but if it's all sagged, what then? The suspension geometry, how do you sort that? It would take, if it's come to all the sagging was coming from the the bushes rather than the actual, because the sills rotting, you would still need to replace all the bushes. It's still dozens of mechanic hours of work time, massive amount of money. Then there's the fact that I had a leak in the seal between the gearbox and the engine, so the oil had an oil leak, so it's a gearbox out job. Then the catalyst, the bank one catalyst, that's a subframe, lower front subframe, drop it out. You have to do that. I mean, it's a nightmare. So I'm finally free of it, and what a relief. Although I was on the way home, I was just gobsmacked. I mean, I couldn't believe what I'd just gone through. I mean, I don't like arguing with people like that, especially strangers. You can argue with, a girlfriend or family member and stuff, and then you can forgive them shortly afterwards, because usually it starts from something small and becomes big. But arguing with a stranger is really ugly, and it was an ugly argument. So anyway, I'm finally free of it, and if we go through here to the door, I'm so happy to see that car back again. I'm going to have to take it off of Gumtree. I was going to sell my old 190 because there's some rust. I'll show you actually, although I'm wearing my slippers, never mind. Rust here on the front wing. See the rust? Front wing's a little bit rotten, and there's some rust here behind here. So both these wings should ideally need replaced, and also the there's a little bit of play in the steering. I believe it's the bearings on the spider web. I think it's a steering rack job. Although the MOT, when it did get MOT, that car passed with one advisory, which was front discs, which were instantly done. So that car, 30 years old, passed MOT with no advisories essentially. And they didn't even notice. There's a little bit of play, I can feel it, but they didn't even notice it on the MOT. It wasn't even like a minor. It wasn't. They didn't even pick anything up. So it's mechanically sorted. It's just going to cost a lot of money for bodywork, because bodywork costs a lot of money. I wasn't really willing to put the money into it. And the ironic thing is, I bought the Jaguar and was wanting to sell the Mercedes because the Mercedes was going to start costing money. So the Jaguar's gone. Thank goodness for that. It's gone. You won't have to hear about it ever again. I promise. No more. It is the worst car I've ever bought in my life. That finally replaced the Citroen Zara I had, which was my third car. And there's nothing wrong with the Zara. It was just a girly car. I didn't like it very much. It was just a nice car for nice people to go shopping in, and it had no driving spirit about it whatsoever. It wasn't a driver's car. But that X-Type was replaced. That's the worst car I've ever bought, and hopefully the worst car I will ever have in my entire life. And I have had 2 Alfa Romeos, and they weren't as unreliable as that piece of shit. So yes, no more of that. Thank you for sticking with me during my rant. I promise there'll be more RC related stuff next time. The reason I was away for so long is I just did a really short offshore trip. I was away for less than a week. I left on a Monday, came back on a Friday, so I did like a normal 9 to 5 job, except I was offshore. So that's done now. So I'm back here. I won't get paid for a couple of months. So I'm still absolutely rookied for money, mostly because of, I'm not going to say it, you know what. And yeah, we'll hopefully be able to improve on what I've been delivering of late. So apologies for the higgledy-piggledy mess of, you know, sometimes there's videos 1 week, sometimes there's 2 videos in a week, sometimes you go 3 weeks with nothing. It's the way it's been at the moment. So thanks for bearing with me, guys. As always, I really appreciate everybody tuning in and everything. It does mean a lot to me. But anyway, take care and we'll catch you later. Cheers.